Hi, my name is Ryan Cummings. I'm the owner of the R&R Law Group. We're a criminal defense firm here in Scottsdale, Arizona, and today we're talking about aggravated DUIs. Aggravated DUIs are a felony in Arizona, and what that means is it can carry harsher penalties and worse consequences for you. A regular DUI means that the state has to prove that you were driving or in actual physical control of a motor vehicle and that your blood concentration was above a 0.08, above a 0.15, or above a 0.20, or that after consuming alcohol, that your ability to drive was impaired at least to the slightest degree. This also takes place for drug DUIs. So if you have any drug or its metabolite in your system, you could also be convicted of a DUI. With misdemeanor DUIs, obviously the penalties are a lot easier, but we're talking about aggravated DUIs today. What I tell people aggravated DUIs are is the state has to prove the DUI plus something else. What that means then is that there's 5 ways in which you can get an aggravated DUI in Arizona. One of them is if you get a DUI plus your license was suspended. Another one is if you get a DUI and you're driving the wrong way on a highway. If you get an aggravated DUI and you've had at least 2 prior DUIs in the past 7 years. If you get a DUI and you had a kid under the age of 15 in your car. These are all the things that they're going to have to be able to prove in order to convict you of aggravated driving under the influence. Breaking those down, if you're convicted of an aggravated DUI while your license was suspended, that's a class 4 felony. What happens then is if you're convicted of that, if the state's able to go and prove that you had a license suspended, and in order to do that, they're going to have to bring in documents from the motor vehicle department that shows that you knew or that you should have known, meaning that they mailed out a notice, or now that they're putting it in your MVD Now portal, that you should have known that your license was suspended. If they're able to prove those things, then and you're found guilty at trial, then a judge must sentence you to 4 months of prison time before you can get put on probation. So a lot of people look at this now and they're like, oh my gosh, how does this aggravate? Well, let's say you are driving in Scottsdale, you get a photo radar ticket, you don't realize then that they said that you got served, now your license gets suspended. Okay? Now you go out and you have a couple of drinks, and now an officer is alleging that you committed a DUI. Well, if you didn't know your license was suspended, but you should have known, or that's what they're going to try and prove, then you could be convicted of an aggravated DUI, and now you go from potentially facing 1 day in jail to 4 months in prison just between those 2 differences. Okay. Another important one that was recently added, or I say recently, it's probably been 5 or 6 years now, but was the wrong way driving DUI. Now, the importance of that is that the purpose of that DUI, aggravated DUI, was for people who were driving on a highway and that they were driving the wrong way. You may remember we had a rash of cases that came out in which wrong way drivers ended up killing people, causing bad accidents, and later was determined that they were under the influence or had a blood alcohol concentration above a 0.08. What happened then there was the legislatures went in and said, we're going to make a new aggravated DUI section. That is, if you're driving the wrong way on a highway and your blood alcohol concentration is above a 0.08, or again, they're proving the DUI, it's DUI plus something else, and in this instance, it's driving the wrong way on a highway. But what happened then is that we had clients that were starting to get charged when they were driving the wrong way on surface streets. And that's why you have to really pay attention to the statute and be looking at it, because you could be driving downtown Phoenix, you make one wrong turn because you're not familiar with the area and you're on a one-way street, and now it's a big issue. Really the purpose behind the legislation was to combat those wrong-way drivers on the highway. Okay? If you're convicted of a aggravated DUI for wrong-way driving on a highway, you too are also going to be placed up to with a minimum of 4 months in the Department of Corrections before a judge can put you onto probation. It seems harsh. Arizona has pretty heavy laws on this, and that's why, again, it's important to have good representation. The other way that you can get an aggravated DUI in Arizona is if you have a child under the age of 15 in the car with you. Surprisingly, this punishment is not as harsh as some of the other aggravated DUIs. If you're convicted of this at trial, it's also a class 6 felony, which is our lowest level felony that we have in Arizona. But it can have lots of additional license consequences. Your driver's license can get revoked. you can have other consequences that happen with the MVD. But the penalties, as far as the court is concerned, is not as harsh as it is for some of the other aggravated DUIs. There is no mandatory prison sentence that is ordered before you're able to start probation. Essentially what happens is, if you're convicted of the Class 6 DUI with a passenger under the age of 15 in your car, then you must serve whatever sentence would be if this would have been a misdemeanor DUI. So let's say the allegation is your blood alcohol concentrations above a 0.15. In Arizona, the mandatory minimum would be you have to serve 30 days of jail. That's what your consequence would be, and then probation along with that if you're convicted of that aggravated DUI. And then the fifth way that you can get an aggravated DUI in Arizona is if you were required to install the ignition interlock device into your vehicle. So if you don't have the ignition interlock device in your vehicle and you get a DUI, that's that fifth way that you can get an aggravated DUI in Arizona. So, as we talked about, aggravated DUI is a DUI plus one. So if you don't have an ignition interlock device in your vehicle, that's going to raise the bar up to that aggravated DUI. So they have to prove the DUI, and then also they have to prove, again, through MVD documents or Motor Vehicle Department documents, that you are required to put an ignition interlock device in your car. Now, a lot of people would think, well, how do I get a DUI if I have an ignition interlock device in my car? And that's really that purpose behind the legislation is, if you have an ignition interlock device in your car, you're not going to be able to start your car if you've been drinking. So sometimes we'll see these cases come up when either people just didn't install the ignition interlock device in their car, maybe they're driving somebody else's car, they're driving a friend's car, and again, it's just the allegation that you were driving while under the influence, and then that you were supposed to have that. So how does this come about? Well, maybe an officer pulls over the car, you were designated driver for the night, and you've got 3 drunk friends with you in the car. Officer says that he smells alcohol. You step out of the car, he realizes that you're supposed to have an ignition interlock device on your car, so now that officer's just going to look at you and think, well, I think you're under the influence as well. You get arrested, you get charged, now it's an aggravated DUI. Now, if you get convicted of this, the penalties aren't as harsh as some of the other ones. You don't have a 4-month prison sentence before you start probation. However, if you were convicted of it, you would still face the same penalties that you had as though it were a DUI. And if you had a previous DUI, and that's why you were ordered to have the ignition interlock device in your car, now it becomes a second DUI, and those penalties can be a lot harsher. So there's some other issues that come up with aggravated DUIs. If you guys have questions, or if you get charged with an aggravated DUI, it's important to have good representation on your side. So call us at the R&R Law Group, and we'll make sure that your case is handled right.